The red sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the crystal fields. Dr. Tae-ho Kim wiped sweat from his forehead as he studied the scanner readings. For 3 months, his team had been digging on this remote planet. They had found nothing but rocks and old bones. "Doctor, you need to see this," called Dr. Sojin Park from across the dig site. Her voice carried excitement that made Tae-ho's heart beat faster. Tae-ho hurried over to where Sojin was kneeling beside a strange metal surface. The metal was black as space itself. It seemed to drink in the light around it. No matter how bright their work lights were, the metal stayed dark. "What is it?" Tae-ho asked. "I think it's a door," Sojin said. She ran her hands along the smooth surface. "The scanner says there's a big empty space underneath, like a room or a vault." Commander Jae-won Lee walked over with his security team. The tall man always looked serious, but now his face showed real interest. "How big is this thing?" "The vault goes down about 50 meters, Sojin replied. "It's as wide as our main camp." Tae-ho felt his pulse quicken. In all his years as an archaeologist, he had never found anything this big or this strange. The metal was unlike anything in their databases. It was older than the oldest known civilizations. "Can we open it?" he asked. Sojin pointed to strange symbols carved into the metal surface. "These markings aren't like anything we've seen before, but look at this." She pressed her hand against one of the symbols. The metal began to glow with a soft blue light. The symbols pulsed like a heartbeat. Then with a sound like thunder, the metal surface split open. Ancient air rushed out, carrying smells of ozone and something else. Something that made the hair on their arms stand up. "By the stars," Jae-won whispered. Below them, stone steps led down into darkness. The walls of the stairway were covered in more of the glowing symbols. Each step they took made the symbols glow brighter. "Should we call the Galactic Council?" Sojin asked. Tae-ho shook his head. "Not yet. Let's see what we're dealing with first." They descended the steps slowly. Jae-won's security team went first, their weapons ready. The stairway seemed to go on forever. Finally, they reached the bottom. The vault was enormous. The ceiling stretched high above them, supported by pillars that looked like they were made from solid starlight. In the center of the room stood a single platform. On that platform sat something that made them all stop and stare. It was armor, but not like any armor they had ever seen. The suit was made of the same black metal as the door above. It absorbed light so completely that it seemed like a hole cut out of reality. The armor was sleek and smooth without any visible joints or seams. It looked like it had been grown rather than built. "It's beautiful," Sojin breathed. The armor stood upright on the platform, as if waiting for someone to wear it. Strange energy. Patterns moved across its surface like slow lightning. The air around it hummed with power. Tae-ho pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the armor. The device immediately went crazy. Numbers flashed across the screen too fast to read. Then the scanner started smoking and died. "The energy readings are off the charts," Jae-won said, checking his own equipment. "This thing is more powerful than our ship's reactor. We need to study this properly," Tae-ho said. "Sojin, contact the research station. Tell them we need a full archaeological team down here." "What about the other species?" she asked. "The Galactic Council has rules about discoveries like this," Tae-ho looked at the armor again. Something about it made him feel strange. Not afraid exactly. More like he was looking at something that was looking back at him. "Send word to the Council," he said finally. "But tell them we need time to secure the site first." Within days, the news spread across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species arrived on Kepler 442b. The Vextar came with their insect-like ships and clicking voices. The Lumina arrived in vessels that seemed made of pure light. The Bruthen brought their massive war cruisers because they brought war cruisers everywhere. Each species claimed they had the right to study the armor first. The Vextar said it looked like technology from their ancient ancestors. The Lumina claimed they could sense its spiritual energy. The Bruthen just wanted to know if it could be used as a weapon. Dr. Hyun-woo Choi, the expedition's physicist, set up scanning equipment around the armor. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases," he told Taeho. It's almost like the armor is alive. Alive? Taeho asked. The energy patterns change. They respond to things around them. When someone gets close, the patterns speed up. When they move away, the patterns slow down. The first test came when Kliktar, the Vextar archaeologist, approached the armor. The insect-like being moved forward with his four arms extended. His compound eyes reflected the armor's dark surface. Ancient technology calls to its makers. Kliktar clicked in his strange voice. The moment his claw touched the armor's surface, everything went wrong. A pulse of energy exploded from the armor. Kliktar was thrown backward across the vault. He hit the far wall with a sickening crack and slid to the floor. His translator box sparked and died. "Medical team," J1 shouted. The armor's surface now rippled like water. The energy patterns moved faster, almost angry. The air around it crackled with electricity. "It rejected him," Sojin said in amazement. The armor actually rejected contact. Natel, the Lumina mystic, floated forward on her energy platform. Her translucent body glowed with soft colors. "Perhaps it requires a more gentle approach. I will commune with its spirit." She didn't try to touch the armor. Instead, she closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. The Lumina were telepathic, able to speak directly to the thoughts of others. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Natel screamed. It wasn't a sound any of them had heard before. It was the scream of someone whose mind had touched something terrible. Natel collapsed onto her platform, her body flickering like a broken light. "What did you see?" Taeho asked when the medical team had stabilized her. "Screaming silence," Natel whispered. "Ancient rage. It burns with the fury of dead stars. This armor, it judges. It finds us all wanting." Gorthak, the Bruthan warrior, stepped forward. His massive body was covered in ritual scars. His people were the strongest fighters in the galaxy. "Perhaps it respects only strength," he growled. He didn't try to be gentle or clever. He simply walked up to the armor and grabbed it with both hands. The explosion was even bigger this time. Gorthak was launched through the air like a missile. He crashed through two of the crystal pillars before hitting the wall. Even his thick hide was burned by the energy discharge. "Enough," Taeho shouted. "No one else touches it until we understand what we're dealing with." But privately, he was fascinated. The armor wasn't just rejecting contact, it was rejecting these specific beings. Each rejection was different, as if the armor was responding to something unique about each species. The Vextar approach had been met with violent force. The Lumina's mental touch had been answered with psychic pain. The Bruthan's strength had been overwhelmed by greater strength. "It's testing them," he told Sojin that night as they sat in their camp. "The armor is somehow judging each being that approaches it." "But judging them for what?" she asked. Taeho looked back toward the vault entrance. Somewhere below, the armor waited in its chamber of ancient stone and starlight. It had rejected every alien species that had tried to claim it. "I don't know," he said, "but I have a feeling we're going to find out." The armor waited in the darkness, its energy patterns pulsing like a slow heartbeat. News of the armor spread across the galaxy like wildfire, but its wait was almost over. Within a week, Kepler 442b was surrounded by ships from every major species. Soon it would choose. The sky filled with vessels of all shapes and sizes. Some looked like metal insects. Others glowed like small suns. The biggest ones were as large as cities. Dr. Taeho Kim stood in the command center of the research station, watching the chaos above. Representatives from the Galactic Council were arguing over who had the right to study the armor. Their voices filled the communication channels with angry words in dozens of languages. "This is getting out of hand," Commander Jaewon Lee said. He pointed at the tactical display. "We have 17 different fleets up there. Some of them have weapons pointed at each other." The Galactic Council had made their decision. The armor would be moved to Nexus Prime, the Council's main research facility. There, the greatest scientists from all species would study it together. At least that was the plan. Dr. Sojin Park shook her head as she read the transport orders. "They want to move it in 3 days. That's not enough time to study it properly." The council doesn't care about proper study, Teho replied. They're afraid of what might happen if one species claims it for themselves. The transport ship Cosmic Harmony was massive. It was built by the Lumina and powered by Vextar technology. Bruthan weapons protected it. It was supposed to represent unity between species. But Teho could see the cracks in that unity already. Loading the armor was the first problem. The moment they tried to move it from its platform, the armor reacted. Energy pulses filled the vault. The ancient symbols on the walls began to glow brighter than ever before. 3 loading robots were destroyed before they figured out how to move the platform itself. It doesn't want to leave, Sojin observed as they watched the armor being loaded into a special containment chamber aboard the Cosmic Harmony. Dr. Hyunwoo Choi was monitoring the energy readings. The patterns are changing again. It's like the armor knows it's being moved against its will. The Cosmic Harmony was a floating city. It had laboratories for every type of research. Scientists from dozens of species worked in different sections of the ship. The armor was placed in the central laboratory where everyone could study it. That's when the real problems began. The first attempt was made by Dr. Veltar of the Aquatic Collective. His people lived in the deep oceans of their homeworld. They were known for their patience and wisdom. Surely, they thought, such an ancient being would respect these qualities. Dr. Veltar approached the armor slowly, his gills fluttering with nervous excitement. He spoke in the old language of his people, words that had been used to commune with sea spirits for thousands of years. The armor's response was immediate and terrifying. Water began to boil around Dr. Veltar. Steam filled the laboratory. The aquatic scientist screamed as his protective suit failed. He was rushed to the medical bay with severe burns. The armor heated the water around him, Hyunwoo reported. It somehow knew exactly how to hurt an aquatic species. 2 days later, the Crystalline Collective tried their approach. Their representative, a being made of living crystal named Shard of Stars, believed that only beings of pure mineral could understand such ancient technology. The moment Shard of Stars touched the armor, resonance frequencies filled the laboratory. The sound was so intense that several species had to leave the room. Shard of Stars began to crack. Pieces of his crystal body fell to the floor like broken glass. He retreated, leaving a trail of crystal dust behind him. It found his natural frequency, Dr. Hyunwoo explained to the gathered scientists. It almost shattered him completely. The attempts continued day after day. Each species believed they had the key to understanding the armor. Each was violently rejected. The gas giant floaters tried to surround it with their cloud-like bodies. The armor created a vortex that scattered them across the laboratory. The silicon-based builders attempted to interface with it using their quantum consciousness. The armor sent feedback that crashed their shared mind network for hours. The energy. Beings of the void tried to merge with its power source. They were repelled so violently that they couldn't reform their bodies for 2 days. With each rejection, the armor seemed to grow more active. The energy patterns on its surface moved faster. Sometimes, strange holographic symbols would appear in the air around it. They would hover for a few seconds, then vanish before anyone could record them properly. It's learning, Hyunwoo told Teho during one of their private meetings. Every time someone approaches it, the armor scans them. It's building a database of some kind. A database of what? Teho asked. I think it's cataloging species, looking for something specific. But I can't figure out what. The political situation was getting worse. The Vextar Consortium was demanding that the armor be given to them. They claimed their ancient texts mentioned a similar artifact. The Lumina Collective said their spiritual leaders had dreamed of such a device. The Bruthan Empire simply stated that whoever was strongest should control it. Ambassador Kretak of the Vextar spoke before the assembled scientists. His translator made his clicking speech sound cold and mechanical. This armor clearly belongs to an insectoid species. The energy patterns match our ancient technology signatures. High Priestess Lumiara of the Lumina floated forward, her body glowing with indignation. The spiritual resonance of this artifact speaks to souls of light. Only beings who have transcended physical form can truly understand it. General Gorthak of the Bruthan slammed his massive fist on the table. Enough talk. The armor responds to strength, My people will claim it through trial by combat if necessary. Dr. Taeho watched the arguments with growing concern. The unity that was supposed to guide this research was falling apart. Each species was becoming more convinced that the armor belonged to them and them alone. Meanwhile, the human members of the expedition were largely ignored. The other species saw humans as newcomers to the galaxy. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 300 years ago. What could such a young species possibly understand about ancient artifacts? This dismissal allowed Dr. Hyun-woo to continue his private observations. He noticed things that the other scientists missed. The armor didn't just reject contact randomly. Its reactions were specific to each species that approached it. When insectoid species came near, it generated electromagnetic pulses that interfered with their compound eyes. When energy beings approached, it created energy-dampening fields. When telepathic species tried to read it, it projected psychic static. It's not just rejecting them, Hyun-woo told his human colleagues. It's specifically countering their natural abilities, like it knows exactly what each species is capable of and how to defend against them. But why? So Jin asked. What is it protecting itself from? Maybe it's not protecting itself from them, Taeho said slowly. Maybe it's protecting itself for someone else. The breakthrough came during the third week aboard the Cosmic Harmony. The mechanical collective had sent their most advanced android, Unit Prime 7. The android was supposedly free from biological limitations that might trigger the armor's defenses. Unit Prime 7 approached with perfect mechanical precision. Its sensors scanned the armor from every angle. Its quantum processors calculated the optimal contact point. Everything was planned to perfection. The armor's response was the most violent yet. Energy cascaded across the laboratory in waves. Unit Prime 7 was not just thrown back, it was completely dismantled. Pieces of the android were scattered across 3 decks of the ship. In the aftermath, as the emergency teams cleaned up the debris, Dr. Hyun-woo made a discovery. Hidden in the energy readings from the encounter was a pattern. It was brief, lasting only microseconds, but it was there. The pattern looked almost like a scan, as if the armor had been trying to read something in Unit Prime 7, something it hadn't found in any of the biological species either. It's looking for something specific, Hyun-woo reported to the emergency council meeting. Some quality or characteristic that none of the species we've tested possess. Ambassador Kretak's mandibles clicked angrily. Impossible. The combined races of the Galactic Council represent every form of intelligent life in the galaxy. Maybe. Not every form, Taeho said quietly. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the human archaeologist. What do you mean? High Priestess Lumiara asked. Taeho looked at his fellow humans, then back at the assembled aliens. Has anyone considered that maybe the armor isn't looking for the most advanced species, or the oldest, or the strongest? Then what is it looking for? General Gorthak demanded. I don't know, Taeho admitted. But I think we're about to find out. In the central laboratory, the armor waited in its containment field. Its energy patterns pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat. Like something alive, patient, and still searching. The answer was closer than any of them realized. The emergency council meeting lasted for hours. Representatives from 17 species argued about what to do next. The armor had rejected every attempt at contact. Dozens of beings had been injured. Some scientists were starting to say the artifact was too dangerous to study. Dr. Taeho Kim sat quietly in the corner, watching the chaos. Ambassador Kretak was clicking angrily about wasted resources. High Priestess Lumiara floated in circles, her light flickering with frustration. General Gorthak kept pounding the table with his massive fists. Perhaps we should destroy it, suggested Dr. Plix of the Tentacled Collective. His 8 arms waved nervously as he spoke. This armor brings only violence and discord. Destroy it. Ambassador Kretak's compound eyes focused on the smaller alien. You would destroy the greatest archaeological find in galactic history. What good is a find that cannot be studied? Dr. Plix replied. It has hospitalized 37 beings in 3 weeks. Dr. Hyun-woo Choi cleared his throat. All eyes turned to the human physicist. He looked nervous but determined. "I request permission to approach the armor." The room fell silent. Then Ambassador Kretok began to click with what sounded like laughter. "A human?" General Gorthak's deep voice rumbled with amusement. "Your species has been in space for less than 4 centuries. What makes you think you can succeed where ancient civilizations have failed?" "That's exactly why we might succeed," Tejo said, standing up. "Maybe the armor isn't looking for age or wisdom or strength. Maybe it's looking for something else." High Priestess Lumiara's glow dimmed to a soft whisper. "And what might that be, young human?" "I don't know," Tejo admitted. "But we won't find out by sitting here arguing." The debate continued for another hour. Finally, Dr. Veltar of the Aquatic Collective spoke up. His gills still showed scars from his encounter with the armor, but his voice was calm. "Let them try," he said. "We have exhausted all other options. If the humans fail, we are no worse off than before. If they succeed—" He paused, his large eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. "Perhaps we will finally understand what we are dealing with." The vote was close, but the humans were given permission. However, there were conditions. The approach would be monitored by every sensor on the ship. Medical teams would be standing by, and if anything went wrong, the humans would be pulled back immediately. Dr. Sojin Park joined Tejo as they prepared for the approach. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "No," Tejo replied honestly. "But I have a feeling. Call it archaeologist's instinct." They entered the central laboratory together. The armor stood in its containment field, as dark and mysterious as ever. The energy patterns on its surface moved slowly like breathing. But as the humans approached, something changed. The patterns began to move faster. Not in the angry, violent way they had with other species. This was different. It was almost like excitement. "The energy readings are spiking," Dr. Hunwoo reported from the observation deck. "But not in a hostile way. The frequencies are completely different from what we've seen before." Tejo stepped closer to the containment field. The armor's surface began to ripple like water. Colors appeared in its darkness, deep blues and purples that seemed to come from within the metal itself. "It's beautiful," Sojin whispered. "Deactivate the containment field," Tejo said into his communicator. "Are you insane?" General Gorthak's voice boomed through the speakers. "That field is the only thing protecting you. It's also the only thing between us and the armor," Tejo replied. "Trust me." There was a long pause. Then Dr. Veltar's voice came through the speakers. "Deactivate the field." The energy barrier flickered and died. For the first time since its discovery, the armor stood completely unprotected. The humans were less than 5 meters away from it. Nothing happened. No energy pulses. No violent rejection. The armor simply waited, its surface, colors shifting like a gentle aurora. Tejo took another step forward. The armor's patterns grew brighter. Another step. The colors deepened. With each step, the armor seemed to respond with what could only be described as anticipation. "This is incredible." Dr. Hyunwoo's voice was filled with wonder. "The armor's entire energy signature is changing. It's like it's welcoming them." Finally, Tejo stood directly in front of the armor. Up close, he could see that the surface wasn't completely smooth. There were patterns etched into the metal so fine they were almost invisible. Ancient symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched them. "Hello?" he said softly. The armor pulsed once, gently. Tejo reached out his hand. His fingers were trembling slightly. Behind him, he could hear Sojin holding her breath. From the observation deck came the sound of dozens of beings waiting to see what would happen. His hand touched the armor's surface. The world exploded into light and sound and sensation, but not violently. It was like being caught in a gentle storm of information. Images flashed through Tejo's mind, star maps showing galaxies he had never seen. Symbols that somehow made perfect sense even though he had never learned their meaning. And through it all, a voice that spoke without words. Finally, the voice was ancient beyond measure. tired from waiting, but filled with hope. It spoke directly to Teho's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. You are the ones we have been waiting for. Who are you? Teho managed to ask, though he wasn't sure if he spoke the words aloud or just thought them. We were the first. We came before all others. We built the great works and seeded the stars with life, but we knew our time was ending. So we made this armor and we waited. Images flowed through Teho's mind. He saw a great civilization spanning entire galaxies, beings of incredible power and wisdom who had shaped the universe itself. But he also saw darkness approaching, something terrible that consumed everything in its path. The Devourers come. They have come before, and they will come again. When they do, the galaxy will need a guardian, someone who can unite all the scattered children of the stars. Why us? Teho asked. Why humans? We're the youngest species in the galaxy. Age is not strength. Wisdom is not power. You have what the others lack. What's that? Hope. Change. The ability to see potential where others see only problems. The other species have grown set in their ways. They think they know all there is to know. But you still believe that impossible things can be possible. The connection deepened. Teho felt the armor scanning his memories, his thoughts, his very soul. But it wasn't invasive or frightening. It was like being understood completely for the first time in his life. You have suffered much as a species. Wars, disasters, mistakes that nearly destroyed you. But each time you found a way to survive, to grow, to become better than you were. This is why we choose you. Around them, the laboratory filled with holographic displays. Star charts appeared in the air, showing the positions of fleets and worlds. Ancient text scrolled past in languages that predated known civilization. Sojin stepped closer, her eyes wide with wonder. Teho? What's happening? The armor's attention turned to her, and she gasped as the same connection formed. The voice spoke to both of them now. You work together, not as master and servant, but as equals. The other species have hierarchies, rigid structures that limit their potential, but humans, you adapt. You change. You find new ways to solve old problems. The other species won't accept this, Sojin said. They'll never believe that humans are chosen to guard the galaxy. They will have no choice. The darkness is coming, and only the chosen guardian can stand against it. But the guardian cannot stand alone. They will need all the species working together. How do we convince them to work together? Teho asked. They can barely be in the same room without fighting. That is why you were chosen. Others would try to rule through fear or force. But humans, you inspire. You show others what they could become, not what they should fear. The holographic displays began to fade. The connection was weakening, but not breaking. The armor had accepted them, bonded with them in a way that would never be fully severed. The time of choosing is not yet complete. One among you must become the guardian. When the darkness comes, they will need to wear this armor and stand against the void. Who? Sojin asked. That choice is yours to make, but choose wisely. The fate of all life in the galaxy may depend on it. The light faded, and the armor returned to its normal state. But something fundamental had changed. The armor was no longer alien and hostile. It was waiting, patient and ready, for the moment when humanity would need its power. Teho and Sojin stepped back, both of them shaken by what they had experienced. Behind them, the observation deck was completely silent. Every being aboard the ship had witnessed the impossible. The armor had chosen humanity. Now the real work would begin. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. Humans had made contact with the ancient armor. The youngest species in the Galactic Council had succeeded where all others had failed. Some called it impossible. Others called it a lie. Many called it dangerous, Dr. Tae-ho Kim stood before the emergency assembly of the Galactic Council. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the great chamber. Their voices created a storm of clicks, buzzes, musical tones, and electronic sounds. The universal translators worked overtime to keep up. "Explain this human trickery," Ambassador Kritak demanded. His compound eyes glittered with anger. "No primitive species could accomplish what we could not." "It's not trickery," Tae-ho replied calmly. "The armor chose us. It spoke to us. It showed us why." High Priestess Lumiara floated forward, her body glowing with skeptical energy. "And what reason did this ancient artifact give for rejecting civilizations that have existed for millions of years?" Tae-ho looked around the chamber. He saw suspicion, anger, and fear in hundreds of alien faces. "Because we still believe things can change. Because we hope even when everything seems hopeless. Because we work together instead of trying to control each other." General Gorthak's laugh boomed through the chamber. "Hope? That is your great strength? My people conquered 3 star systems while your species was still learning to make fire. And that's exactly the problem," Dr. Sojin Park said, stepping forward to join Tae-ho. "The armor isn't looking for conquerors, it's looking for guardians." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species that had ruled the galaxy for eons weren't ready to accept that newcomers might be chosen for something they could not have. But then the warnings started coming in. The first reports came from the outer rim territories. Deep space monitoring stations had detected something moving in the void between galaxies. Something massive. Something that absorbed light and energy as it moved. Dr. Hyunwoo Choi analyzed the data with growing alarm. "The energy signatures match what the armor showed us," he told the human delegation. "The Devourers are real, and they're coming." The invasion began at the edge of the Andorian sector. 3 entire star systems simply disappeared, not destroyed, not conquered. They vanished completely, leaving only empty space where planets and stars had been. The Galactic Defense Fleet moved to intercept the threat. Their ships were the most advanced in the galaxy. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand supernovas. It wasn't enough. The Devourers weren't ships or armies in any sense that the galaxy understood. They were entities of pure entropy, beings that existed to unmake creation itself. They flowed through space like living darkness, consuming matter and energy and information itself. The first battle lasted 6 minutes. An entire battle fleet was reduced to nothing. The survivors reported that their weapons had no effect. The Devourers simply absorbed everything: energy beams, particle weapons, even nuclear explosions, and grew stronger. "Conventional warfare is useless," Admiral Torthan of the Combined Fleet reported to the Emergency Council. His normally confident voice shook with fear. "We need a new strategy." "We need the Guardian," Tae-ho said. The choice of who would wear the armor had been debated for weeks. The humans had discussed it among themselves, knowing the decision would change everything. It couldn't be Tae-ho. He was needed as a diplomat and scholar. It couldn't be Sojin. Her research skills were too valuable. Commander Jae-won Lee had volunteered. He was a soldier, trained for impossible situations. More importantly, he understood leadership. Not the kind of leadership that came from fear or power, but the kind that inspired others to be better than they thought they could be. "Are you sure about this?" Tae-ho asked as they prepared for the bonding ceremony. Jae-won nodded, his face calm but determined. "Someone has to do it. And if the armor chose our species, then I trust its judgment." The ceremony took place in the Central Laboratory of the Cosmic Harmony. Representatives from every species watched as Jae-won approached the armor. The artifact responded to him the same way it had to Tae-ho and Sojin, with welcome instead of rejection. When Jae-won touched the armor, it began to change. The solid metal flowed like liquid, reshaping itself to fit his body perfectly. As it covered him, light began to shine from within the dark material. The transformation was incredible to watch. The armor didn't just protect Jae-won, it enhanced everything about him. His reflexes became lightning fast. His mind could process information at superhuman speeds. Most importantly, his ability to understand and communicate with others grew beyond anything previously imagined. "How do you feel?" Sojin asked when the bonding was complete. Jaewon's voice came from within the armor, but it sounded different, stronger, more certain. "I feel connected, not just to the armor but to everything. I can sense the fear of every being on this ship. I can feel the approach of the Devourers like a cold wind." "Can you stop them?" General Gorthiak asked. Even the proud Bruthan warrior looked worried. "Not alone," Jaewon replied. "The armor gives me power, but power isn't enough. We need unity. We need every species working together." "Impossible," Ambassador Kretak clicked. "The species of the galaxy have competed for resources for millions of years. We cannot simply set aside our differences." Jaewon turned to face the Vextar ambassador. Though the armor covered his face, somehow his emotions were visible through it. "Then we'll all die separately." The Devourers reached the mid-rim systems 3 days later. Entire civilizations vanished in hours. Refugee fleets fled toward the galactic core, bringing stories of impossible horror. The enemy couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be stopped, couldn't even be understood. "We need to evacuate the core worlds," Admiral Torthon reported. "Gather all our fleets at the galactic center for a final stand." "No," Jaewon said. The armor had changed him, given him access to knowledge and strategies that no single mind could have conceived. "Running won't save us. We need to fight, but not the way we've always fought." "What do you propose?" High Priestess Lumiara asked. Jaewon activated the holographic displays that surrounded the armor. Star charts appeared, showing the positions of every fleet in the galaxy. "The Devourers expect us to fight as separate species, each group defending their own territory. That's how civilizations have always fought." "Because that's the logical strategy," General Gorthak rumbled. "For normal enemies, yes, but the Devourers aren't normal. They're entropy itself. Division makes them stronger. Unity is the only thing they can't consume." The plan that Jaewon outlined was unlike anything the galaxy had ever attempted. Instead of each species defending their own worlds, all fleets would be mixed together. Vextar tactics would be combined with Lumina technology and Bruthan firepower. Every species would contribute their unique strengths to a single, unified strategy. "This is madness," Ambassador Kretak protested. "Our species have been enemies for centuries. We can't simply trust each other with our lives." "Yes, you can," Jaewon said. Through the armor, his voice carried a conviction that reached every being in the chamber. "Because the alternative is extinction." The armor began to project something new. Not holographic displays, but emotions. Hope. Determination. The unshakable belief that impossible things could become possible if everyone worked together. One by one, the species agreed to the plan. Not because they trusted each other, but because they trusted the human who had somehow become something more than human, while remaining essentially human. As the combined fleets prepared for the final battle, Jaewon stood in the command center of the Cosmic Harmony. The armor allowed him to coordinate with ships across the entire galaxy, to understand tactics from a dozen different species, to inspire courage in beings he had never met. "The Devourers are approaching the galactic core," Dr. Hunwoo reported. "They'll be here in 6 hours. Jaewon nodded. Through the armor's connection, he could feel the fear and determination of millions of beings across hundreds of worlds. They were all looking to him, this human who had become their guardian. "Then we'd better be ready," he said. The fate of the galaxy would be decided in the next few hours. And for the first time since the invasion began, there was hope. The final battle began at the edge of the galactic core. The Devourers came like a wave of living darkness, consuming space itself as they moved. Where they passed, stars went out. Planets dissolved into nothing. Even light seemed to die in their presence. Commander Jaewon Lee stood in the command center of the United Fleet, his armor glowing with ancient power. Through its connection, he could sense every ship, every warrior, every frightened being across 1,000 different worlds. The weight of their hopes pressed down on him, but somehow, the armor made it bearable. "All fleets report ready, Admiral," Torthan announced. His voice was steady, but J1 could feel his fear through the armor's enhanced senses. The combined fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Vextar hive ships flew alongside Lumina light cruisers. Bruthan battleships formed protective formations around aquatic collective biovessels. Former enemies worked together because a human in ancient armor had convinced them it was possible. "Remember the plan?" J1 broadcast to every ship. His voice reached millions of beings across dozens of species. "We're not fighting as separate armies today. We're fighting as one people, one galaxy, one hope." The Devourers struck the outer defense perimeter with impossible force. They didn't use weapons in any normal sense. They simply existed, and their existence unmade everything around them. The first wave of defenders vanished without firing a shot. "Energy readings are off the scale," Dr. Hyun-woo reported from the Cosmic Harmony. "They're not just destroying matter. They're unmaking the fundamental forces that hold reality together." Phase 2, J1 commanded. The mixed fleets began their coordinated attack. But instead of trying to destroy the Devourers with conventional weapons, they followed J1's strategy. Lumina ships created fields of pure creation energy. Vextar vessels calculated probability matrices that forced order into chaos. Bruthan ships provided the raw power needed to fuel the impossible. For a moment it seemed to work. The Devourers slowed their advance. Some of them even appeared to flicker, as if the unified response was causing them damage. But then they adapted. "They're learning from our attacks," Sojin reported, her voice tight with worry. "Each time we hit them, they become more resistant to that type of energy." The Devourers pushed forward again, their advance even faster than before. Entire battle groups were consumed in seconds. The careful formations began to break apart as panic spread through the fleet. "We're losing." General Gorthak's normally confident voice carried despair. "Perhaps we should consider evacuation to another galaxy." "No," J1 said firmly. Through the armor, he could feel the Devourers' true nature. They weren't just destroyers of matter and energy. They were entropy itself, the end of all things. Running would only delay the inevitable. "This is where we make our stand." The armor began to glow brighter, its ancient systems coming fully online for the first time in millions of years. J1 felt power flowing through him, but more than that, he felt understanding. The armor wasn't just a weapon or a tool. It was a teacher. "I need every ship to link their computers to the Cosmic Harmony," he ordered. "All species, all technologies, everything we have." "That's impossible," Ambassador Kretak protested. "Our systems aren't compatible." "The armor will make them compatible," J1 replied. "Trust me." One by one, the ships of the United Fleet linked their systems together. Vextar hive minds connected to Lumina quantum processors. Bruthan war computers interfaced with aquatic bioneural networks. The armor served as the bridge, translating between technologies that had never been designed to work together. The result was something unprecedented. A galactic consciousness formed, linking every thinking being in the fleet, not erasing their individuality but amplifying it. Each species' unique strengths became available to all the others. J1 felt his awareness expand beyond anything he had ever imagined. He could think with the logic of the Vextar, feel with the emotions of the Lumina, fight with the courage of the Bruthan. Every being in the fleet became part of a single unified will. "Now," he whispered. The United Fleet struck back against the Devourers, but not with weapons. They attacked with creation itself. Where the Devourers brought entropy and ending, the galaxy responded with life and beginning. New stars ignited in the void. Planets formed from cosmic dust. Life sparked in the darkness. The Devourers recoiled, their advance stopping for the first time since the invasion began. They had faced weapons before, had consumed armies and technologies, beyond counting. But they had never faced this. The combined will of an entire galaxy choosing hope over despair. "It's working!" Dr. Hyun-woo shouted over the noise of 1,000 different species cheering. The Devourers are actually retreating. But Jaewon could feel through the armor that the victory was temporary. The Devourers were regrouping, preparing for a final assault. They were pouring more of themselves into the galaxy, drawing power from the void between universes. They're bringing everything they have, he told the fleet. This next attack will be their strongest. If we survive it, we win. If we don't, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Every being in the galactic consciousness understood what was at stake. The final assault came like the end of the world itself. The Devourers struck with power drawn from the death of universes. Reality itself began to unravel around them. Stars aged billions of years in seconds. Planets crumbled to dust. Even time seemed to slow and stop. The united fleet held together through sheer will. The armor blazed with light so bright it could be seen across the galaxy. Jaewon felt himself being pushed beyond his limits, beyond what any single being should be able to endure. But he wasn't single being anymore. He was connected to every brave soul who had chosen to stand against the darkness. Their strength became his strength. Their hope became his hope. For the galaxy, he shouted, his voice reaching every ship, every world, every being who still believed in tomorrow. The response was instantaneous. Every species in the fleet poured their energy into the armor, not their weapons or their technology, but their very essence. Their dreams, their hopes, their unshakable belief that life was worth defending. The armor channeled all of that energy into a single, perfect moment of creation, not destroying the Devourers, but transforming them. Entropy became growth. Ending became beginning. Darkness became light. The wave of transformation spread outward from the galactic core, reaching every corner of space. Where it passed, the consumed systems were restored. Dead stars reignited. Lost worlds reformed. Even the beings who had been unmade returned as if they had never been gone. The Devourers themselves were not destroyed but changed. Their hunger for entropy became a desire to create. Their nature as ending became a nature as beginning. They scattered across the universe, but now they seeded new galaxies instead of consuming them. When the light faded, Jaewon found himself standing in the command center of the cosmic harmony, the armor's glow dimming to a gentle pulse. Around him, representatives of every species stared in amazement at what they had accomplished together. "Is it over?" So-Jin asked softly. "This threat, yes," Jaewon replied. The armor was already showing him glimpses of the future, of other challenges that would come. But there will be others. There always are. And when they come? General Gorthok asked. Jaewon looked around at the gathered aliens who had become something more than allies. They had become a true galactic community, united not by fear or force, but by the shared experience of choosing hope over despair. "When they come, we'll face them together," he said. "All of us. As one galaxy, one people, one hope." The armor pulsed once more, then began to fade. Its work was done, its lesson taught. The galaxy had learned that their greatest strength wasn't their individual technologies or powers, but their ability to work together despite their differences. In the months that followed, the Galactic Council was reformed. No longer was it dominated by the oldest or strongest species. Representatives from every world, no matter how small or young, had an equal voice. Humans, who had been newcomers just months before, found themselves serving as mediators and peacekeepers. Dr. Tae-ho Kim returned to his archaeological work, but now he studied sites across the galaxy, helping different species understand their shared heritage. Dr. So-Jin Park established the first truly integrated research facilities, where beings from dozens of worlds worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Commander Jaewon Lee kept the armor, but he wore it rarely. Most of the time it wasn't needed. The galaxy had learned to police itself, to solve problems through cooperation rather than conflict. But when the impossible became necessary, when hope seemed lost and darkness threatened, the armor would be there. and the Guardian would stand ready to remind the galaxy of what they could accomplish when they worked together. The armor had rejected all aliens until it chose a human, but in the end it had done something even more important. It had taught them all to choose each other.